I think it's going to be ladies first tonight, so we're going to get going with you first. But Ronel, tell us a little bit, first of all, just before you get going about yourself. You can stand, guys.
Okay.
They're making themselves so comfortable. Come, stand with me. Come.
So
Tell us
my
a bit
name's
about yourself,
Ronel,
and what you do.
I've got my own business. So we focus on making women feel most beautiful. So we make beautiful dresses.
Yeah.
And I'm from Polokwane, and now I live in Joburg for the last 10 years.
Give it up for Polokwane. Come on. Come on now. And the business is Mrs. Rose. Beautiful business and an incredible job that you guys are doing. Well done. And quickly, Barry, introduce yourself.
So I'm Barry. I'm a mechanical engineer.
Not Mr. Rose, no. No, that's different.
Mechanical engineer, and what else?
That's it. And you're almost as tall as Vaughan. Maybe a bit taller.
Almost.
Awesome. Well, I think, Barry, I want you to grab a seat there. It's going to be ladies first. And so what we're doing tonight, as many of you all know, we're in the year of Cultivate is our theme for the year. And we're really speaking into, God is going to use you in your spaces, your places, and your relationships. And I really wanted to take an opportunity over these 3 weeks to just hear some real-life examples of how God is doing that, of what God is doing in people's lives, of the incredible things that He's doing, and let people have the opportunity to share their testimony. Hear some of that. And so I'm really excited about it. Over the 3 weeks, we're going to have many more people sharing theirs. And so these will go up on YouTube in the next week as testimony snippets, so do look out for that. But Ronel, I'm going to hand it over to you, so let's give Ronel a big welcome as she shares.
I was prepared to sit down, but I'm ready. Cool, please. So God has done so much in my life, and I actually have so many testimonies to share, but tonight I want to focus on one specific story that really stands out to me, and where God really altered so many things in my life. So I'm the youngest of 3 kids, and like I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Polokwane on a farm, and because my brother and I were only 16 months apart, my dad had to just jump in and help more with the kids, and soon we became really close. They say there's no such thing as a favorite child, but I was most definitely my dad's. And if anybody ever needed a favor, I was the one to ask, because he just couldn't say no to me. So my dad loved cycling, something that we shared. He literally did all the races all over the country, from the Argus to the 947. And then one Saturday in 2008, I was in grade 11 at the time, in high school. It was actually only my mom and I living at home. My brother was in varsity already, and my sister was married, and she was moved out of the house. So on that Saturday, my dad was cycling with his club, and they were actually going downhill around 70 kilometers an hour. And then at that fatal moment, my dad's stem of his bike handle snapped, and he actually went flying over his bike, and he fell on his neck. At the time, my dad didn't understand the severity of his injuries, but at least he had knowledgeable people with him that made sure he didn't move until the ambulance came, and they rushed him to the hospital. And upon arrival at the hospital, we were greeted by my dad's battered and bruised, motionless body. And then a doctor approached us to give us the rundown of his injuries, and he told us that he actually broken his C2. So I didn't actually know the severity of this, but if you break your C2, you are basically paralyzed from the neck down. Sorry. So this frighteningly prospect meant that the doctors had to perform multiple surgeries just to try and save my dad's life. After several surgeries, my dad was fitted with a halo and a back brace. And for those that don't know what a halo is, it's a metal device that stabilizes your spine and your neck. And it actually gets screwed into your skull into 4 different places. Weeks went by in the hospital, and then weeks went and turned into months where my dad was in and out of the intensive care. And we were at the hospital 3 times a day, every day, just praying that God would bring my dad through this horrible, horrible accident. And before we knew it, half a year had passed, and after multiple illness scares, which included pneumonia, hallucinations, and constant paranoia. But my dad was resilient and God was faithful, and we started to see my dad improving slightly until we were woken up one morning by the deafening sound of my mom's cell phone ringing, and it was the doctors letting us know that my dad had multiple strokes. He actually had 3 strokes, and he couldn't breathe by himself anymore, so he was on a respirator, and our family was back into survival mode while my dad was fighting for his life. And then in the coming weeks, my dad didn't really make any meaningful progress. My anxiety levels were beyond comprehension, and the constant fear of my dad losing his life was ever present. I remember a day shortly after the strokes, a teacher summoned me to a classroom to say that she's so sorry my dad's not going to make it. And I just remember that feeling so tangibly, and I just hit rock bottom. Like a wave of emotion came over me, and I just cried uncontrollably. And that same day at break time, my friends were like talking about boys and complaining about pimples, and my dad was dying. So we rushed to the hospital to say our last goodbyes, a feeling so gut-wrenching. We didn't know what to do. The only thing we could do was wait and pray. And then that night, a prophet appeared at the hospital and actually prayed for my dad. And the next morning, God came through for us, and my dad didn't die. After a couple of weeks in the hospital, our family had grown weary of the multiple trips every day to the hospital and also what the next phone call could mean. So my mom took the brave decision to nurse my dad at home and not put him back into the high care unit where he actually kept getting pneumonia and sick multiple times. So the day my dad came home from the hospital, he was a meek version of his former self. Once toned and incredibly fit, he was now half his size, incredibly skinny, and he couldn't even support himself. I remember we pushed him out on a wheelchair, and we had to actually tie him to the wheelchair because he couldn't support himself. And we were also told that my dad would never, ever be able to function normally again. He was left with severe memory loss, and the multiple strokes made his once happy, extroverted personality. Now he was just a shadow, like a helpless, unresponsive shadow. The first few days at home was really, really tough. Like, we had to tie him to the bed. He was screaming through most nights. The pain and paranoia was relentless. Here I was trying to pass my grade 11 year in high school while my family was torn into chaos. My dad had forgotten who most of us were, and I found myself asking God how this was better than losing my dad. Yet, as time moved on, we started to see small miracles. There was the day that my dad's catheter was removed, and then also the day that he took his first steps with the walking ring. Somehow, God's plan wasn't finished. I was relieved but also overwhelmed because my dad was here, but he was also gone. He was a totally different person. There were fits of rage and anger and moments of helplessness. He was almost childlike, and I had to become the parent and the caregiver. Then there were moments where my dad had completely hated me. He told me I was worthless and that I don't deserve anything in this life. He would get these anger outbreaks, and he swore at me and threw me with things, and he broke me down. This went on into my matric year. I've never felt so alone in my life. I lost my good grades, and my friends were in different priorities to me, and my mom and I, we were also in the same situation, so we couldn't really help each other. I had moments where I wanted to hurt myself because I thought that maybe, just maybe, if I could feel physical pain, then the emotional pain would go away. And over time, I really tried everything, but nothing worked. So I went on to antidepressants, and I felt like that made it even worse. It heightened the feelings that I was already feeling. And I actually did end up hurting myself physically. And at the time, I also got involved with a very manipulative boyfriend that had even more issues than me, which is a combination destined for destruction. And I remember one night at school, we had a dancing performance, and I didn't even perform because I decided that alcohol would be more fun and would maybe numb the pain. So I found myself at the back of the school shouting at God, asking him, why am I still suffering? Do you even love me? Like, are you even here, God? And I often also thought it would have been better if my dad died, because things didn't change. It actually became worse. If somebody dies, you get to mourn them. Whereas what happened to me was I lost my dad and I had to live with a totally different person, a person that resented and hated me. I also made really bad decisions that year that I really do regret. But there is a silver lining. My mom and I didn't get along before this horrible situation, and God gave us the opportunity to reunite, and she was my only true friend during this tough time. And in my first year of varsity, this boyfriend that I made my everything cheated on me. So I was devastated, and I felt like I had no one to talk to. I even tried to speak to my brother about my dad, and he was just like, well, it's over now, so get over it. And I just really felt like all the men in my life disappointed me, and like men couldn't be trusted. And this time, my dad was still very sick, and he still had rage and short-term memory loss. And I remember he used to ask over and over again, what are we doing now? Where are we going now? And people would also sometimes ask me, how's your dad doing? And I'll be like, that psycho's not my dad. But I didn't say that. But then I met some great people in varsity, and people that really loved God and had the opportunity to really work through things with God. I was radically changed over time and filled with God's love and forgiveness. And I also realized how much anger I had towards my dad, and it was a long process to forgive him. And then a year after that, God gave me a word through someone that I've never met before. He said that God is going to restore your relationship with your dad completely. And then 2 years later, at my graduation, my parents came to visit me. That weekend, I really had time to spend with my dad, and for the first time, it actually felt like I could call him dad again. It wasn't perfect, and it didn't maybe look exactly what I thought it would look like. But afterwards, the Holy Spirit came over me, and I just knew that God restored our relationship. It was the hardest 6 years of my life, I'm not going to lie. But Jesus changed the bad into good. I can truly testify today that in God's timing, He makes everything beautiful, and He's just so faithful. And if I look back now, I wouldn't change anything. Because Jesus changed me radically, and I am who I am today because of that situation. And I'm so grateful for the pain, because now I know Jesus, and that's the biggest gift of all. And I'm so grateful because now I've got an incredible bond with my mom. And through all of this, Jesus kept loving me and pursuing me, and He never stopped. And He also restored the relationship with my dad. And the best day ever was on my wedding day, when my dad got to walk me down the aisle. It was literally the best day, and it was just such a blessing from God. So I can truly say that God changes the heartache into joy and victory. And God has also raised me up now to help other people that go through similar things and to serve in youth ministry. And at my emptiest, God filled me up. And at my loneliest time in my life, Jesus was the only one I could rely on. So if there's anyone here tonight that's going through the same kind of pain, or that's suffering with depression, I just want to encourage you that God loves you and He sees you, and He also wants to change your heartache make it into something beautiful and use it for His glory. And you are not alone. And in closing, I also want to encourage everybody here tonight that God shows no favoritism. If He can change my pain and suffering and use it to testify here today and to change it into something beautiful, He can do the same for you. And what I've also learned is that even when life is really tough, God is in control, and no matter what, God will never leave you. He is for you, and He will restore you. It might not look exactly like what you've imagined it to be. It will be even better, and He also wants to give victory to you like He gave to me. Thank you.